Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the player supplement, the Spirit Guide class, designed by Joshua Raffles for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. When I first heard about this player class, I initially thought of a shaman or a spiritualist or somebody who communes with spirits or can summon spirits. That's actually a variant that is included at the end of this class, but the primary class, the actual spirit guide, is that the player character is actually the ghost. So the prerequisite for this new class is that you died, which is a pretty harsh prerequisite. It can be a very interesting solution. I think the idea is that it's a alternate solution between, just raising that character from the dead, because obviously most D&D universes you can just resurrect your character, or just rolling up a new character. So this is something in between where you can acknowledge your character has been killed, but you can continue to play them as this spirit guide class, in which case you are a ghost. You cannot attack, you cannot cast spells, you can't interact with objects, you have like a D4 for hit points, you have no proficiencies, and you're thinking, okay, why am I subjecting myself to this? You do have resistance to pretty much all non-magical attacks. You're immune to a lot of obvious conditions. You're not incorporeal, at least yet, and I think that's a way to balance it out, because you could technically play this character at any level, so you don't actually gain like flight or the ability to pass through objects until I think 15th level, so quite a bit later. But you don't take falling damage. That's at least kind of acknowledged. You have an ethereal sight. You can cast thaumaturgy at will. But the main thing is you do get the ghostly ability to possess hosts, so you get a chance to do that. Now, without including any subclasses yet, at level 1 you can possess a willing humanoid. So the idea is you would possess one of your party members, and you grant them all of the proficiencies in saving throws and skills and weapons that you would have to your host, which could be hugely beneficial. And also you gain certain abilities you can use as an action. And it was tricky to wrap my head around this because, as much as we love doing all kinds of things in D&D, it is primarily a combat simulator. So what are you doing in combat if you cannot attack, you can't cast spells, and the spirit guide doesn't have any real features of their own until you start leveling up? You get a few, you can cast augury, I think, as an action, and some kind of thematic spells. You do gain some actions you can do. You can essentially grant advantage to your host. You can give them temporary hit points. It's kind of like minor buffs, basically. It's not too exciting at first, and later on you gain manifestations at 3rd level, which work pretty much exactly like Warlock invocations, although I thought the ones in here were very good and very appropriate. We'll get into that in a second. But thankfully, what rescues this entire concept are the subclasses. The subclasses are very, very good. You can select them from the beginning at level 1, and they do a really fun job of highlighting the different kind of spirits that are out there. So there's basically the Benevolent Spirit, which is the duty not, I love the names of them, by the way, duty not done, malice unsated, mischief not managed, and restless blade are the names of all the subclasses, which are very cool. Duty not done, you basically gain better buffs for your host. So the idea is if you like possessing your party members, you can grant them even better abilities. You can have them under the protection of protection of evil and good spell, permanently whenever you possess them. It's if you like that idea of just possessing one party member and doing all your things to make them better, which again is a tricky thing to wrap your head around. If you're your own player character, all you're doing is making somebody else better, but that is an option. Malice unsated is if you want to be a hostile, vengeful spirit. This is the, Paladin Oath of Vengeance kind of thing. And you can possess enemies, and this is a lot more interesting mechanically, I think, because you can possess unwilling humanoids. They have to make a charisma saving throw, and then you have other actions you can do, which are basically debuffs. So you can have them grant them disadvantage. You can have them babble so they can't cast spells properly, and then you can take invocation, let you do other things, like you can paralyze them and do some other abilities. So you can also, I believe, damage them every time they attack. So you can't you're not a unit that is attacking enemies, but you are a spirit that can buff your allies or hinder your opponents. Mischief Not Managed, you become basically a poltergeist. You gain proficiency in a bunch of stealth skills. You have an invisible mage hand like the Arcane Trickster, and you can animate objects, although it's a little bit different than the actual wizard spell. I believe the number of objects you can animate is actually tied to there's a chart that shows your supernatural powers, which is tied to several different abilities, and that's how many objects you can animate. It's because you can do it, pretty early on. I think at 6th level as the Mischief Not Man. Yeah, beginning at 6th level you can animate objects. And then at where am I? Mischief Not Managed. 11th level, yeah. So 11th level you can possess unwilling creatures, similar to the Malice Unsated. And then the Restless Blade is, if you want to be more of a combat unit, you can be better at possessing your allies and giving them attacks and defenses, but more importantly, and they kind of bury the lead on this because I think this was the ultimate ability for the Restless Blade is at 6th level, you can become a Phantasmal Warrior, essentially become a ghostly combat unit with your own armor class, your own attack, you gain extra attack, and the number of damage you deal is d6s tied to your supernatural powers. So at 6th level, you're doing 2d6 when you're attacking twice. So that feels pretty good. You can do it once per short rest. So that kind of solves the whole problem. But you can see how each of these is thematically appropriate to different kinds of ghosts and allows you to double down on different aspects of it. So you might lose the variety of being able to do a whole bunch of things, but at least with all these subclasses, you can focus on certain things that you want to do very well. Manifestations, we get a lot of these provided, and they do a pretty good job of giving you extra abilities you can do. You can cast spells, which normally I believe the only one that can actually cast spells is Duty Not Done, the Benevolent Ghost. That's one of their main things, is you just become a spellcaster. And you can cast certain spells from the Spirit Guide spell list, which are mainly a combination of like Cleric and Paladin spells that you would kind of, and some Warlock stuff too, that you would kind of associate with ghostly stuff. This allows you to gain either new spells or gain different abilities, such as you can paralyze somebody that you're possessing. If you're possessing an enemy, you can replenish spell slots for your host. You can do this horrifying visage that frightens everyone around you, or a mournful wail that has different AoE effects. This is a pretty good job of giving you extra things you can do. The one that made me really cock an eyebrow is you can cast Spiritual Weapon at will with Phantasmal Strike. Spiritual Weapon is one of the best low-level spells in the game. It does not require concentration. You summon a thing, and from then on during combat you can use a bonus action as basically an extra attack with this floating weapon. I think it's very thematically appropriate here, but it's also extremely valuable because no matter what ghostly subclass you take, you can start taking manifestations at 3rd level. If you take that one, you always have an attack option with you, and it's almost to where I almost feel like I wish Spiritual Weapon was like a part of baked into the base class. That way it would just solve the issue of like, man, I wish I could just attack once in a while instead of having to take certain subclasses to be able to attack, or certain manifestations to be able to attack. Because Spiritual Weapon is extremely useful, and you could use that in any combat. You can literally cast it at will. It says attack with it despite your spirit form. So that seems like a very powerful one. I mean, obviously you could be a ghost and not ever attack, but again, I'm just thinking D&D, combat simulator, most folks are going to want to attack at least sometime. So I'm glad that one's in there as an option, but I feel like that maybe even should have been baked into in the basic class. Now, this whole time I'm thinking, okay, this is actually a cool idea. It does a good job of turning a ghostly PC into an actual legitimate player character. There are some good abilities in here. There are obviously huge drawbacks. With the main concern being, well, the only way to do this is if you accept being dead, or if for some reason you want to create one at level 1 who's already dead, which I do like the fact, and this is something I've had a complaint with in other class supplements, is that we don't get these tables of extra role-playing notes, which is a thing that was added in Xanathars for the most part. Different D6s of that help you build a backstory about your character, and this one does do that, including your untimely demise, which I like that one of them is dead, I'm not dead, or I died in an embarrassing mundane accident, so I make up a different story, or I died broken alongside a forgotten battlefield, or the villain who destroyed my village or my people also killed me, and I'm come back. There's also a quirk you can give to your host whenever you possess them, and any kind of ghostly phenomenons that you create when you're around them. But the whole problem is like, well, this is a really tricky class to even be because you have to be dead first, and you have to accept being a completely different class, being a dead character, which could be fascinating, but for a lot of folks, it's a very niche thing to be. The solution here is the Occultist, which is what I thought this class was, instead of being the actual ghost. But the Occultist is win-win. Like, you can do it, all of it. You become you're just a normal PC, at least relatively normal to being a freaking ghost. You don't have any proficiencies. You don't have any spellcasting. You don't really have anything of your own except the ability to summon a spirit, and the spirit has all of the abilities in the Spirit Guide class. So you can choose their what do you call it? Their spirit first level. What is that thing called? Their unfinished business. You can select what unfinished business, which is the subclass. So you can select their subclass. They get manifestations at 3rd level. They get all of the things. So it's basically all about your Spirit Guide companion, but that is your like pet ally companion, and you still get to be a normal PC with all of your own, race and background and everything else, and you're still alive. So I think that's a really good solution to saying, if you really like this idea, you liked all these abilities, but you don't literally want to play as the ghost who is buffing other players, then you can just be the one who summons this ghost, and that ghost can then buff you, ostensibly, or, do whatever, possess enemies or do whatever you want it to do, because you get all those abilities in place. So I really, really love that this was included as a variant, because this would have been probably a con, is that it's a very limited way of playing this class because you're freaking dead ghost or undead ghost. And in this case, the Occultist allows you to actually be the character and then summon it, to where I almost think like this should have been the main class, and then the Spirit Guide, it could have been the variant, is like you could actually be the ghost. I feel like that's the more common solution, is like you are more commonly the spiritualist, the shaman, the occultist, the ghost summoner, rather than you're the actual ghost itself. But otherwise, it's pretty much the exact same. Like, you get all of the ghostly abilities, you get everything that you want. I believe if your spirit dies, you do have to make a charisma save, or you suffer 3 levels of exhaustion if you fail, 1 if you pass, and you have to wait till a long rest to actually channel the spirit. So the bummer is, it's similar to how you were a spirit. The spirit is targetable, has its own hit points and everything else. So you kind of have to take care of them as if they were a powerful pet class, and you are basically nothing without that ghost. You really don't have any abilities whatsoever, so you really need that thing to be alive. But alive. But I think it's a really cool idea. It's well put together. You can see the organization as if it was lifted right from the player's handbook, which I always like. There's artwork throughout, which is very nice. It's very well edited, well organized. It's got all the things that I want to see, and I think it's a really, really neat class idea that could offer as a good solution to a slain PC, or just an interesting thing to play as that would be completely different, especially if you're bored with playing a bunch of different characters. What if you were a ghost? Or you can just be the occultist and be the ghost summoner, and then get all those abilities while still playing as whatever character you want to play as. Let's go over my pros and cons for the Spirit Guide class. Pros: it's a unique and interesting take on playing a ghostly PC. There's 4 subclasses, each with fun and thematic abilities. I thought all 4, and usually a lot of times when I see these subclasses, there's some I like, some I don't like. Honestly, I thought all 4 of these were pretty cool. They all had their own different abilities and interesting features about them, which was pretty impressive. Pros: the Occultist variant lets you play a more normal PC with a spirit companion, which in my opinion is the way more common route to take, is that you are actually the spirit summoner, you get that as a pet, and then you gain all those abilities while still being a relatively normal, alive PC. But hey, if you want to play as the ghost, you do you. Cons: none. Honestly, I don't have any complaints. Everything feels fairly well balanced. I love that the level 20 ability, you have a choice between gaining as a spirit, you have the choice between either as an action passing on to the passing on to the afterworld and ending your career, or you gain the wish spell to self-resurrect yourself. That's the whole, which is funny because you're a ghost. Like, what's the goal of being level 20? Is to either pass on or or fully resurrect. So I thought that was a funny take. But I got no real complaints in here. All these abilities seem pretty fun, useful. I don't mind the fact that, manifestations are pretty much just warlock invocations, but they all seem pretty well balanced, and everything is very thematically tied to being a ghost. Ghost. Verdict. Whether the perfect solution to a slain PC who can't let go, or the desire to play a ghost summoner, the Spirit Guide class is a successful take on a challenging concept. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. And you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.